Now here comes the interesting stuff. All in Wembley. Punk talks about what a stupid idea having the roster split between Collision and Dynamite is, because it never would have worked. He said it from the beginning. And before Collision became a thing, when he was still out with the triceps tear, he begged Tony Khan to just fire him instead. Tony refused, and then Jack Perry, who was a known associate of the EVP, well, yeah, you know, Collision happens, and then a few weeks later, Jack Perry turns up to an episode of Collision, and this is where the car thing happens. So, a known associates of the EVPs, the Young Bucks and Adam Page, not that he's an EVP, and Kenny Omega, but they're all part of the same clique. The initial issue was that Jack Perry was yelling at agents, and then the doctor, and then Tony Schiavone about not being allowed to use real glass for a outside vignette, where he was told to get a rental car, and then they were going to do something with glass to then, I don't know if he was like going to punch it through or he was going to get put through. It's so late, I just can't remember. Sorry, everybody. But essentially, they were playing with real glass. So, so in the end, Shivani goes up to Punk and says, "Can you deal with this, please?" And Punk says, "I don't want to deal with this because you won't like the way I handle it." And Shivani was like, "No, you've got to deal with it." So Punk ends up handling it very nicely and says, "Look, there's two reasons. One, this is a rental car, and we don't want to get a bad reputation with the rental agency. And two, you shouldn't be using real glass because it's real glass and it could go disastrously wrong. And there's no reason to risk it. The only other thing is that I can't remember if I said this yet. Jack Perry had a holiday planned and he was going to be gone for a week or two. And that was the reason why he wanted to do it. Here's the thing, is that CM Punk's not wrong. Jack Perry's not really wrong here, because somebody in the office, I imagine Tony Khan or somebody, told him to get the rental car to then do this glass thing.
Yeah, but see, that's conveniently left out in this whole conversation.
Exactly.
Who told him to do this, and who okayed for him to even do the spot? Because Punk knew about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, he was made aware of it.
Tony Schiavone knew about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
See, I think Tony wants to be the boss, but he didn't want to handle the tough stuff. All he had to do was tell Jack, "Don't do it. Why don't you do something else?" But they told him to get a car, I guess, or would he have gotten a? Don't they drive on the other side of the road in the UK?
Yes, the correct side. Yes.
Wait a minute.
No, but that's not Wembley. This is on Collision a few weeks beforehand.
Okay, he got the car in the States, and this wasn't in Wembley.
No. This is a few weeks beforehand. We'll get to Wembley soon enough.
But when did he say it's real glass, cry me a river or something?
That's Wembley. That's jumping slightly ahead. So just prior, this is a few weeks beforehand with the rental car, and it's confusing because there's two separate rental cars where glass is involved. But the point is that Tony Khan is at every single AEW taping. He's never missed one. So why wouldn't someone just go and get Tony and say, "You deal with it"? Has he got some sort of mandate where he says, if there's any kind of confrontation, do not include me?
Where were your EVPs?
Well, they were all they were all banned from Collision. They were all had to be on Dynamite to split away from Punk. So essentially, Punk is when he came back, he had two different contracts. One a talent contract and one a contract as a sort of agent official of Collision. So to a point, what he said goes.
Yeah.
So it gets even more complicated. So he's almost the EVP of Collision. The EVPs are only the EVPs of Dynamite now, or maybe Rampage. And then you've got Jack Perry, who the EVPs, he's in with the EVPs and doesn't like CM Punk. It's very confusing.
Well, I've said this before. I think this was all laid out way, way in advance. Punk was going to WWE come hell or high water. And I think he just wanted to be done with AEW anyway. I think he wanted to get fired. I've said that before.
I think he pretty much. I think he pretty much said it himself in the interview. I don't have the quote for you, sadly, but when I was watching it, he
Do I
pretty
get
much
credit
said
for
it.
saying? Do I get credit for saying that?
You can take the credit.
Thank you very much.
But
But
yeah,
I think he wanted to see. I've said how many times can I say Tony Khan is not a boss. He just wants to be in creative. Now, one day he's going to snap. He's going to get mad at everybody, cuss everybody out. Probably be one of the best things he could do. He needs to show a little authority. And we were talking about it earlier. You cannot be a friend to they call them the boys, the talent. You can't be a friend to the boys and run the show. It doesn't work. It never has worked. Because, like you said, all of a sudden there'll be these guys hanging around him, making him laugh, do this, and then he's got an idea. Yeah, we'll go ahead and and do it. See, Tony, I don't know how he ever envisioned himself as a booker. He just wants to be the booker. Okay, you got $1 billion. You can be a booker. All you got to do is go out and buy talent. If you had $1 billion right now, James, you get on the phone and call these non-committed, some talent.
free agents.
Yeah, free agent, and call them up and say, hey, we're going to do this. But a lot of them they have issues, and I don't know what happened to Elephant Boy, Jack Perry. I don't know what happened to him, but I think putting him with Punk, I don't think Punk works well with the little smartasses. So
we definitely need Elephant Boy Jack Perry.
yeah, but he was
Jungle Boy.
He went to Japan. When did he drop the Jungle Boy deal?
Apparently, that was at Jim Ross's insistence. He just kept refusing to call him Jungle Boy and use his real name.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it kept creeping.
Now that should be another booker's decision. That's not an announcer's decision. And Ross was probably doing it for the right reasons, but just to take it on himself, just to, you have to really notice it didn't mean nothing anyway. But I think he wanted to call him Elephant Boy. It didn't fit him or something.
Do you know that was Sabu's first name? I think Sabu the Elephant Boy or something
really?
like that.
I think it was his name.
Yeah.
But Jim Ross is from the old school. He's from the Bill Watts old school wrestling. And those people in Louisiana and in that part of the country, Memphis, they had tremendous ratings. Memphis beat them all, really, because it was a live show. And you could adjust that show up to the moment you went out on camera. And it was up to date. See, the Mid-South show with Watts and Jim Ross, it was taped. And you had to go with what you had on paper. But Memphis, they had such ratings. I mean, their ratings were astronomical. They would do on Saturday morning what they used to call prime time. They don't really have prime time anymore. TV's undergoing a revolution now. I think streaming and all these other pay-to-view services are taken away from them. But when you would do a 22 rating, that was what Dallas was getting. But that was in prime time. So, and it wasn't because the wrestling was so good in Memphis. It's just that they had people over and they told a good story.
And they use cars as well in Memphis occasionally with Eddie Gilbert driving. We need to watch that. We need to watch that sometime if we haven't already.
The car with Lawler.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey, that was a pretty good bump he took.
He's a stuntman. Just a natural born stuntman, Lawler.
And he wanted to. he wanted to aim it at Eddie Marlin, but Eddie, of course, couldn't have got out of the way. You know, the police came and wanted to arrest Eddie.
Oh,
you
really?
know that, right?
No,
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
because the fans called in on Eddie that he run over Lawler, and it was like a attempted murder. And they went over there and they pulled into the parking lot, came into the station and talked to Eddie. So, what?
No, I
when
had
you
no idea.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't. I didn't
Yeah.
know they tried to arrest him. I know they arrested Billy Joe Travis that time, but I
Yeah,
didn't know the Eddie one. But
yeah, that was another deal. But they wanted to arrest Eddie. They really did.
we'll go through that. We'll save that for the full story. We'll try. I don't have the technology at the moment.
We
to
have
do it,
we
but
haven't
have to
seen
watch
that
it.
already. I thought we showed that.
I'm not sure. We did with Billy Joe Travis, but I'm not sure about Eddie Gilbert. Yeah, everybody write into us and let us know if we've done that already. But otherwise, we'll continue with this. But as I say, there's a car in Memphis. Now we're going back to a car again. So there's the Perry. Jack Perry says it's real glass. Cry me a river, score at Wembley, and then Punk confronts, and his sort of quote here chokes Perry a little bit. He doesn't punch him, and he says that's his way of being professional, which is, I mean, really your way of being professional is just yell at him or something. But apparently, he had to choke him a little bit. Samoa Joe tells him to stop, and he does.
You know what I would have done? Okay, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Wrestlers are great at working scams. If he'd have grabbed me like that, I would have went down. I would have stayed down. I'd have been transported to the hospital on the gurney. I'd have let them check me in. I'd stay 3 or 4 days. And I would say he hurt me. And who would be responsible for that?
The company.
Yep.
The building, the city.
And I'd have a hell of a lot better slot than I had before with more money. So, and I don't know why he didn't do it. I think it surprised I'm gonna call him Jungle Boy. It surprised Jungle Boy too. But I would go to sleep tonight, always believing that Punk wanted to get fired.
I think you're right. I mean, he's already said that he wanted to quit after the brawl out thing, so he definitely wanted to quit on this, and he knew it wouldn't work. So I think you're probably right.
Okay, in the match,
yeah,
immediately following the Jack Perry incident, yeah, Punk went out to work with Samoa Joe.
He did, yeah.
And how was that match? You were there.
It was good. I think it was the best match on the card. Everyone else disagrees.
So that just goes to show you, Punk, he knows what he's doing. He knows, and he's the type that he builds that connection with the fans, and he's got them. They just like him, and he went out there and he had a match after having a scuffle. I call it a scuffle in the dressing room. And who went over in that match?
Punk.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, which I always thought was funny, that Samoa Joe loses clean in the opener, and then 6 months later, less than 6 months later, he's the champion.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think that made. I mean, you couldn't really predict that, I guess, but
Well, what would you have done in that first match? I don't think that should have been the first match, really.
No, I think the reason it was the first match is because, once again, it's the first combined pay-per-view after Punk and the EVPs have to be separated, and they've all going to have separate locker rooms. And the reason why Punk was on first was so that he could get in there and get out, and then the EVPs could do their stuff later. It's all just high school crap, basically, isn't it?
And who at what doorstep does this responsibility stop at?
With Tony Khan's, of course, and
right, absolutely.
And here we go with Tony Khan. Apparently, Punk then. We don't know if he put his hands on Tony Khan or just yelled at him. I mean, he might have grabbed his lapels or something. I don't know.
Who put his hands on who? On Tony Khan?
Punk on Tony Khan. The one thing
I thought he just yelled at him.
We might just yelled at him for all I know. But Punk then leaves later, just makes the security guard's job easier and just says, don't worry, I'll go. I'll just leave because I'm just done with the company anyway. Essentially, he tells Tony Khan that he quits. Tony Khan then fears for his life, which is
He says, what now?
He fears for his life.
Yeah.
Tony Khan. And, he didn't do anything to stop bad feelings festering after brawl outs. We could go so much further into this, but it's nothing that we haven't talked about before, as far as who's in the right, who's in the wrong. And we'll talk about more about that in a minute. But Punk scoffs that he was fired because he said he quit, and that fights happen a lot in the back, and it's not really that huge of a deal. It's sort of almost like blowing off steam, especially in the old days, and basically hints that Tony Khan is a delicate little flower. The only thing I really hope is that Ariel Helwani,
I'm going to take that. You called him a delicate flower. I'm going to actually send it to him. I'm going to send the link to him that you call him a delicate little flower.